Sweet Jesus, thank you for another day together to just gather with these ladies and talk a little bit about your plans for us, your plans for community, your plans for our yoga classes, our businesses, and ultimately our lives. So, Father, I pray that you would just be with us in this hour, keep our conversation on topic, high and tight, and let our words be yours. So we thank you and we praise you for all that you are doing in your name. Amen. All right. Welcome to today's episode at Take Up Your Mat podcast. Today we are talking about community as it applies to our yoga classes as a yoga instructor. And I'm super excited to dig into this topic with you guys. So I'm your host, Jen.
I'm Kelsey.
I'm Megan.
I'm Mia.
Awesome. So community is such a huge part of what we do at Holy Yoga. And today specifically, we just want to look at what community is, why it matters in a yoga class, and hopefully just chat through some ways that we can foster this within our yoga classes and our studios. So who wants to kind of dive in close here? I guess we can ask the question of is community important in a yoga class?
Yes. The very short and simple answer is yes, it is very important. Community makes people want to come back to your class. And it makes people, a yoga class can be the place where for one day a week, someone doesn't feel alone. So to be able to create your own culture and community around that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
that's really sweet, Megan. Yeah, I love that.
Maybe we should first. Maybe my first question should have been what is community? What does community even look like in a studio or in a class?
It's a great question. One thing I read yesterday when I was thinking about community, and I'm just going to use this as a mini, it's not like a definition, but one of the things I was thinking about was, how did Jesus build community? And I came across this quote from the Daily Grace Co. And it was that Jesus was intentional with his presence, which grew trust and sincerity among his friends. He put in effort to know them and care for them. And I think community is a place that builds trust, where people are present with each other. I remember hearing somebody once say, never underestimate the value of presence, not gifts, but your physical presence. And that he put in effort to know and care for them. And something that people I think want now is this, well, I want a space where I can just show up. And it's no, to have real community that means something, it's going to cost you something. There is an effort there. And maybe your effort for right now is that you left your house and you showed up. That can be enough. I don't mean to make that seem like it's not, but eventually, if you want the richness, the depth, it's going to take a little bit more than walking through the door, eventually.
I love that quote as well. Y'all see, we're 5 minutes in and y'all are both laying down some tracks here of good stuff. I think community is intentional in a guileless way that, like you said, you have to put forth the effort, but it can't be, what's the word I'm looking for? Not pretentious, but it can't be, which is Jen's word in the description of Holy Yoga, not pretentious bunch, but it has to be authentic. It can't be contrived is the word. You can't formulate it. You can't
You can't fake it till you
commercial.
make it.
You can't fake it till you make it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think it's super important. I think um, you can feel it, right? When you walk into a studio or a class or a business or a church or like anywhere, really. You walk in and you can feel when it's just like uncomfortable. Like you're not sure, am I supposed to be here? Did I walk into the right place? Why does this feel weird versus walking in somewhere where there is just a tangible, like you can feel comfort, like you can feel the welcoming.
Safety.
Yeah, the safety, the presence. It's always been interesting to me how different spaces feel when you walk into them. And sometimes a space feels a certain way because of, how it's decorated or like what it looks like. I think that can give us off a certain feeling, but often sometimes spaces they just feel a certain way. I have a friend's house. There's nothing fancy about her house. It's usually a mess, kind of like mine. There's kids everywhere. It's loud, but there is something so welcoming about her space that I will sometimes go over there to work and it's so silly because she actually has more kids than me. They're always at home. Like it's always loud, but like there's just something that is there with her. I'm welcome there. I mean, that's really the heart of what it is. Like I know the code to her door to get in. I have a spot that I sit at. She'll have a heating pad and a blankie ready for me. Like it's just there's always food to eat. Like I'm just part of the family and it's welcoming. And I think sometimes we don't even feel that in our own space, right? Like sometimes in our own homes and our own lives, we're not real sure if we're if we're always welcome. So
Mhm.
I think there's a lot to be said about creating a welcoming space. And I think that happens through community, being a welcome community.
I think talking about like welcoming and then also effort, Kelsey, as a yoga instructor, like, and speaking about myself, people want to be known and they want to be seen. So a great way to be welcoming and put in the effort is learn their names. Learn the names of the people coming to your class. Like saying, well, I'm not good with names, which I am guilty of saying. Like, you have to stop saying that. We speak life, so I'm
Amen.
not good with names yet. I'm getting better with names. Like, you have to learn their names because it just goes a long way of people feeling seen and valued. And if you know their name, they will come back.
Oh, 1,000%, Megan. I once had a yoga instructor. His name was Bobby. Shout out to Bobby. Miss you, bud. He to this day is one of my favorite yoga instructors I've ever had for numerous reasons. But one of the things he would do is he would shout out people in his class. Like, I see you, Megan, doing this. Like, I love that. Like, and he was so encouraging in the class. And he taught a very specific style of yoga where that was like, a part of it. If you're teaching like, a yin restorative class, I don't know that you want to be shouting people out while they're like trying to relax. But I think it is so profound to have a teacher not only know your name, but to like be like, way to go. Like, I see your effort and like supporting you. It's really cool. I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most important things that you can do. And to Megan's point, if you speak it, you make it so. So if you're saying that you are bad with names, you're right. You're bad with names. So start telling yourself you're good with names. And I worked for a studio. We had over 700 members. And I can tell you that I probably knew 90% of the names and how important it was. And that's what grew the studio was so big. That sentence didn't sound right. What grew the studio so much was knowing names. When somebody walked through the door after being beat up by the world, hey, Joan, hey, Becky, just to be known in a place, I think is so important. And I also think along those lines, Brooke Boone, I think, is one of the best at this, not being distracted when you're speaking to somebody. If somebody else comes in, acknowledge them, but your attention is on the person in front of you. To be distracted when you're speaking to somebody is minimizing that person, and that's the last thing we're trying to do.
I think that's a really great point, Mia. The name thing, I have always struggled with remembering names. I can't even get my kids' names right. Like, it's one of those things, but it is so important. And I notice when people use my name, I notice when the difference between somebody saying, "Good morning, how are you doing?" versus "Good morning, Jen, how are you doing?" Like, it does something different in my soul to hear that. Like, I think sometimes because have you guys ever read scripture and you read scripture and you're like, "Oh, that's so good," and then you go through again and you like insert your name in the places, and it's like all of a sudden it's so much more powerful feeling. And I think it's the same thing happens when we use people's names. It's like,
and I might get blowback for this. I think if it's important to you, you will remember people's names.
mm-hmm.
I think it should be important because Jesus knows your name. So
A to the men, Megan.
Learning people's names, it should be a priority, especially as a Christ-centered yoga instructor.
Yeah. This is actually making me think about the scripture that I was looking at. I just pulled it up. I was looking at the scripture for totally other reasons when I was thinking about community. But it's Romans 12:16 in the Passion. And it says, "Live happily together in a spirit of harmony and be as mindful of another's worth as you are of your own. Don't live with a lofty mindset, think you are too important to serve others, but be willing to do menial tasks and identify with those who are humble-minded. Don't be smug or even think for a moment that you know it all." And I think it takes humility to want to learn people's names. It takes humility to see value in every single person that walks into your class, and to not think, I this is not flattering. This is a confessional moment to all of you. When I first came into Holy Yoga, this was my heart pre-Jesus restoring it, guys. So we can have compassion for her. But I remember coming in and being like, I was working with celebrities at the time, living in Los Angeles. I attended yoga at a famous, with famous yoga instructors, coming into this yoga community being like, I know, I go to this class, I know the things to be doing, calm down. But even just being what am I going to have in common with these other people in my cabin? At Jesus camp. I was like, you cannot pay me enough money to go there. I don't have anything in common with these people. And what arrogance, what price? I'm a 2, guys. My deadly sin is pride. I'm sorry. I apologize right now. It's not flattering. I told you it's not flattering. But I think that when Jesus changes your heart, right? This verse becomes so real. When you can not think of your own worth as more than another human beings. These practices help you see common humanity. If you have breath in your body, if you are a being created by the divine creator of the universe, I am no more worthy of anything than you are. And being able to value every single person in that way will change their experience of you and your experience of them.
I love that. I love what Mia was saying about not being distracted when you're talking to people, making eye contact with them, not trying to have a half-hearted conversation while you're also over here watching the next person come in, or you're and that can be hard though, right? You're
I'm
one
the
person.
poster child for that right now, Jen, right? I'm the poster child.
But that can be super hard if you are one instructor and you've got people coming in and out of class, you've got a schedule to keep up, you're maybe your schedule is so tight that some people are leaving, others are coming in. Like that can be super distracting. I feel like that's a real thing. And I struggle with that even in other things that I do in life. Is like, man, I want to give everybody attention, but I feel so divided in my attention. And so how do I make this, how do I do this? And one of the things that I heard, I took a class, I don't know, years ago, was a branding course, had nothing to do with yoga, but one of the phrases that I came back with was, be willing to do for the one what you wish you could do for the many. And it was kind of in this regard of like, so often in business, we're like, well, I can't do that for everyone. So to be fair, I'm just not going to do it for anybody. And it was kind of counter to that. It was like, do for the one what you wish you could do for the many. And that stuck with me. And it was like, you know what? I can't talk to every student that comes through the door for 20 minutes every day, but I can pay attention to you for a couple minutes while we're getting ready for class. And then next week, maybe I can focus on somebody else, or, I don't know what the answers are, but I think that like that nugget of like, do for the one what you wish you could do for the many, that's what Jesus did. Right?
And
like
that's one of my,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's one of my favorite stories about the men walking along the beach, the two men walking along the beach. And there's starfish all over the beach. And one man keeps bending down, picking them up, and throwing one at a time back. And his friend scoffs at him and says, you can't save them all. And he said, but I can save the one. I'm very serious about community. And what you were saying, Jen, got me kind of riled up as far as when people, it goes back to last week or the week before's conversation about burnout. When you're running from class to class to class, you're not serving your students, you're serving yourself. You, at the minimum, I feel like you should get to class, 15 minutes early and stay 15 minutes late, preferably 30 minutes early, just to settle your room down, to take time for you to breathe before class starts, for you to sit and just chill the room out. And then when students start coming in, you've already got the lights taken care of. You've got the thermostat taken care of. You've got all the things done, so your focus is them. And then afterwards, like you were saying, and you'll have the students that will want to monopolize your time, but I think it's super important to watch people's body language as well. To watch who is carrying themselves in such a way where they may need attention, and just being aware of what's going on. That is your responsibility as an instructor. That's your get to as an instructor.
Yeah, I think the space and schedule is huge. Having enough buffer room to be available before, be available after. It's the lingering. Like I remember growing up, my dad was a pastor and being in church, and he used to be he would be so proud whenever like we would have trouble getting people out the doors. Like as we ministered growing up in different churches in different areas, there were some churches where it was like, at 11:58, people started looking at their watches, and by 12 o'clock, it needed to be out. We needed to beat I almost said a certain denomination, but I'm not going to say that. We got to beat the other folks to lunch, at the Sizzler. And it was like out the door, we come, we do our sermon, we leave. And then there were other churches where people would linger for 30, 45 minutes, even being like 1 o'clock, like sermon ended an hour ago. And I remember hearing my dad as a kid, of course, I didn't quite understand any of that, but like as an adult, I'm like, I love that. I love being part of a community and a church where there is a lingering that happens afterwards, where people are like cultivating that community. That's to me, that's just as beautiful sometimes as what happens in the hour that they're there previously. So I think having some intentional space, not getting your schedule so tight that you can't have that. And even like when you're looking at your space, like, do you have separate spaces? Like, is there a check-in kind of space or a lounge kind of space? We have some friends that have a studio that have kind of like a little seating area with coffee and little snack cart and all of the things. And it's kind of, people can hang out there even once the next class gets going. Thinking about like, how can we make that happen? Because it's so important. And Megan, to your point, that's what makes people come back. Like, that wasn't just an hour of a yoga class. That was connection. That was relationship. That was something that is pretty special.
Jen, I think that's
Yeah,
huge,
I love the
especially.
linger.
I was just gonna say, I think that's huge, especially for a yoga community where it's so easy for people to come, roll out their mat, do their practice, and leave. And so,
And leave during
you know,
Shavasana.
totally. So
That's the best
having,
part.
I know, it's so yummy. People, this is your tip of life. Stay in Shavasana.
Stay.
Just stay. It's so good to just like melt. I understand for some people it does not feel good. So I feel you. You'll learn. But I think that having that space where people can, or even like, I remember, so obviously I'm talking about this more from like a meditative community space. But I remember one of my meditation teachers, she teaches yoga nidra, and she would be like, turn to your neighbor and give them permission to poke you if you fall asleep. And permission to poke is like the funniest, like, it breaks down barriers between people, because like you would assume like we're in a meditation class, but people think it's like very serious. And it's like, no, it can be lighthearted and there can be fun and there can be a sense of ease. And like, you don't have to like fear your neighbor, you know what I mean? And resent them during class or compare yourself with them, which I think is like a really huge thing. And I don't know. I think it's finding small ways to build and encourage connection. Jen, to your point of coffee carts and lounge spaces is huge.
Every studio should have a coffee cart, just saying. Coffee is
As
a
long as
love
it's
language.
good coffee.
Good
As long as
coffee.
it's
Yeah.
good coffee.
It's gotta be good coffee.
Or good
I've
tea.
had a lot of great conversations at a yoga studio, getting a coffee after class. And then I get to hear from the other people, like what they enjoyed about class, what God is speaking to them. And I got to build connections with people that I never would have even have met had I just like rolled up my mat and went home.
So Brooke Boone, Beardall, does something that, the whole world is research and development, and this is my R&D, where she doesn't say, I'll see you next week. What she says is, I'll see you Tuesday, or whatever day she's teaching again. I'll see you that day. And it's not creating an obligation in them, but it is creating, she's going to be here and she expects me to be here.
Yeah, I love that. I think that it speaks that like there's a commitment there. Like, I have an expectation of you to be here next week. And when you say, yeah, I'll see you then, that means that you're I just think that's like a forward minded thing.
It's
and
like an
it's
invitation.
super inviting.
Yeah.
Super inviting. Along those same lines, like, I think we're talking about like a yoga, like Saturday at 10 o'clock yoga class. But I also think there are the people that I know of that I feel like, man, these guys do community really well. They do events and things outside of just their yoga classes for their students. So it might be, for all of their class students, they're thinking of, let's have coffee, let's do brunch, let's do whatever it is. Like, it can literally be anything. Like, but to do a few events outside of the typical yoga class for the purpose of community. I know we had an instructor not far from where I live that years ago, she used to do an annual Christmas party for all of the instructors in the area. And she's an hour from me, but I would go every year and it was so much fun. It was community. So thinking a little outside of just the Saturday at 10 yoga class, like how can we do some small things that cultivate community?
It's funny because your students will also start doing it, like on Thursday night class where they all meet and go across the street after class, where they will start doing their own community. And that's the most beautiful thing when you see people that are regulars in your class introducing themselves somebody new.
All right, what else? Let me look at my list here. What else do we have? So we've talked about learning people's names. We've talked about creating some space. We've talked about coffee. It's important.
I have one thing to add.
Yeah.
I think the number one thing you should do if you want community is pray. Pray about the community that you want. Be specific about the community that you want. Let God into that and let him guide you into what that looks like and let him open doors to build more community outside of that class. And then everything else will just fall into place.
Back to yoga. Who brought that holy back?
I love that because he will. If he lays, like most of us, I think, as instructors have gone through our training and at some point in our lives, God has given us clarity on who our people are, like who our tribe is. Like, yes, we're going to welcome everybody that walks through the door, but like, who's that like group of people that like, you just know, like, these are my people. These are the people God's called me to minister to. This is what I'm here for. Like, that's so true, Megan. Like when we're praying for those people and we're saying, Lord, bring them, like he's going to bring them. Then it's up to us to have the space and to be present enough in that space with them to not miss it.
Yeah.
I love that. I think too, it's also then recognizing one of the other things that came up when I was thinking about Jesus and his community was like, even though he was for everyone, like this practice is for everyone, not everyone is for him or for this practice. And so just really like holding that loosely. Like, I think it's so easy to take it personally if it doesn't resonate with somebody or somebody doesn't come back. But if you're praying for the right people to come, then the right people will come. And if it doesn't resonate with somebody, it's not meant for them. Maybe it's just not meant for them right now. But I think that I remember hearing once somebody say, like, it was like some staggering number of like how many people out of 10 like won't like you. And it was like pretty high. And I remember being like, again, my two-ness, who just craves belonging, was like, what do you mean? I can make anyone like me. And then I was like, no, baby girl, it's okay. It's okay if they don't, because somebody else will like you and somebody else will like them. And that's all right.
Well, and Kelsey, I think that comes back to whose class is it?
Yeah.
And what are you doing this for? And who is your identity in? Because if your identity is in him, then you hopefully you won't get attached. I know there's a part of our humanness that wants to attach to that. But if we keep our eye on him, and this is his class, hopefully there's less of a sting and not qualifying that we're great if we have all the numbers or we're dirt if we don't, that it's what he wants it to be right then, and praying about who you want there. Yeah. I do have something else that I think helps build community, especially if community isn't your thing, especially if you're a shy instructor or a nervous instructor just starting out. one of the best things you can do is ask open-ended questions, because that will get people talking, versus yes or no questions, which can be real, to let them talk. How is it, not how is it going, because fine will be the answer, but asking a how, a what, or, a, a when. I don't agree with asking why questions. People can get defensive about why questions. The how, the what, the when, um, is a chance for opportunity, or an opportunity.
I think that's a great idea. I think with whether it's you're talking one-on-one with a student, or even you guys, I'm a huge fan of like icebreaker questions. I know they're a little cheesy, but they're just fun and they just lighten people up. Like, what's wrong with having I had a class one time, an instructor that I went to when we lived in New York from time to time, and when we would go into her class, she would say it's like a you had to say it when you went past her, when she would find you coming in the door, or if she didn't, before she started class, she would ask, and she would say, "Tell me something good." Like, tell me something good. It literally could be, I woke up today. I made it here safely. Like, it could be anything. But I loved it because it was like on the days that it was really hard, like on the days that I was like, you know what? There is nothing good to talk about. There is something good. Like it made my kind of gloomy days, it made me shift my mentality to the fact that there is always something good to be thankful for. And to be able to start my practice with that question, it just helped me to switch gears, to like forget about the stuff that I left when I walked through the door, and to help me be present in that hour. So I feel like ask questions. Like, to your point, Mia, ask open-ended questions. Ask a question of the group. Ask something. It's okay for people to talk to you when you start. Open up that conversation.
And keep asking them. I was so impressed. We had some trainees graduate last night, and the common thread that I noticed is they asked questions about the scripture, asked questions about how it felt in the body throughout their practice. And this was their first, peer teaching. And I was just so impressed with them, because that curiosity, it's not just curious about your neighbor, it's curious about yourself. And I think that helps.
Some other ways
Thinking hard, Jen. I see that thinking hard face.
Well, I made a list of ways to think about community in our class, but I don't know how deep we want to go into these things, but I think some other ways that can be good, depending on where you are located, that can be good to help just foster this community. We talked a little bit about like doing events outside, but plugging into your existing community. So local businesses to you, if you teach, whether you teach in a church or you teach in a studio or you teach somewhere in a strip mall, like wherever it is, like what are the other small businesses in your community and how can you partner with them? I think about, we have another instructor who's one of our licensees that does a fantastic job of this. Her studio is in like a strip mall kind of section, and she's got like a chiropractor on one end and a restaurant on another. And she has done a great job of connecting with them to do events or to do some type of social event or some type of partnered thing, and it's drawn people in. It's helped her, I think, reach new audiences and new people, but it's also given her students something to do, something fun to do, whether they're going next door for cocktails the next after class, or they're stopping. They're coming to her because they went to the chiropractor and now they're coming to their yoga class. Like, it can be good for business, but it's also good for just getting involved in your community. So we're talking about creating community, but also being a part of your local community, I think is super important as a small business owner, or even if you don't own your own studio, if you're just teaching, like you can still get involved in your community, in your church, be a provider of value to the people that are around you. I think that goes a long way.
There are so many things that will happen organically like that, as far as when you develop those relationships with neighbors. It's not just my chiropractor told me to come, it's then they're referring people to that chiropractor in your class. They're referring people to your yoga classes. I mean, it's just this spreading of goodwill, and that's where it all starts.
Mm-hmm.
This goodwill in the heart, you know.
Yeah. Another thing that I am a big fan of. Full confession, I have not done this. So I'm going to say it like you should do it, but I'm going to be real enough to tell you I've never done it. But I've had it done to me and I loved it. And that was to receive a little thank you note after class. So maybe not immediately after class, but like to get a little thank you note in the mail that's like, I loved seeing your face in class. Can't wait to see you next week. Or whether they're like a handwritten thank you note, or maybe it's just a text or an email or something. But certainly a text or an email doesn't take a lot. But for it to be real, not to be, we have so many automated systems these days that I'm sure there are automations that can automatically just send you a thank you. But to have one be specific and genuine and use my name and say, I hope you get, I hope you good luck on your job interview next week, or like whatever it was that we talked about, like that personal connection is just, I think that can go a long way. And also a great way, I think, to create community is to connect people, like connect your students with one another. So, oh my gosh, you have 3 boys, Sally Joe over here. She has 3 boys too. Oh, you're a military wife? Oh, so-and-so has a daughter that just joined. Like connecting your people by sharing their story. In order to share their story, you're going to need to know their story. Know who your people are, celebrate them, whether that's like you could highlight your students on like social media or on a newsletter if you do, like finding ways to connect with them, get their story, connect them with other people. I just think it's so important to creating students that will, we want students that are going to walk into somebody else's yoga class and be like, it was fine. Like it just wasn't home. Right? Like we want them to feel like it's home. We want them to feel like my friend's couch that I go sit on. Like it's not perfect. I'm not here because it's perfect. It's just, it feels like home. It's a safe space. It's a welcoming space. It's a space that I can come as simply and honestly as I can manage, and I'm not judged for it. And whether I can overdo every posture I try to do, or whether I literally lay there in my mat for an hour, or anything in between, like I'm here for it. I'm welcome in it. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think people oftentimes think that community is a lot harder than it is. They think it has to look Pinterest worthy or Instagram worthy. Like they think, in order to have good community in my space or in my class, I need to be over the top. I need to have gift bags for everyone, and I need to have the fanciest coffee there, and I need to have this and I need to have that. And the truth is, like, it's in the little things that we do. Like, it's in the making of the eye contact. It's in the knowing of somebody's name. It's in the not being distracted when we're talking to them. It's in the asking how their son did at their tournament last week. It's in those things. And if it's not something that's natural to you, we have this lovely thing right here that takes great notes. Like, make notes for yourself. I am not naturally a words of affirmation person. It's just, this is not my love language. I don't really like to receive words of affirmation. It makes me super uncomfortable. And I'm not very good at giving them. But I have people that I work with and people that I love and people in my family that, like, that's their thing. I have to make myself tasks. I will not tell you who I have to make tasks for, and don't judge me whenever you get a text from me and you're like, oh, that's so sweet, and then hold it against me that I probably made a task for it. It is a thing. Like, if you're like, this is not a natural thing for me, do something to help yourself. It's okay. It's okay to have to do that. Like, if names are hard, like, come up with a rhyme, find something that makes you remember their name, right? Like, a feature that they have, or somebody that you know, or a comment they made. Like, find a connection to help you remember their name or remember what it is that they're doing. Those are all free things, by the way. Those don't cost any money. They don't really cost you a great deal of time. You don't have to be an expert at anything in order to do those things. You just have to have a heart. To Kelsey's point at the beginning, you have to have a heart to love others. And that's really all you need. And I think that is it. I think community really can be as simple as that. Like, it can look elaborate for those that have a gift of hospitality and all of that. They have these amazing places, and that's wonderful. But don't discount your ability to have a thriving community in your yoga classes in your studio just because you don't think you're good at it. It's why we're here, right?
Yeah.
Jen, and it goes back to one of my other verse notes, which is, I'll be short, Megan, I promise. Just John 15:12, which is, so this is my command: love each other deeply as much as I have loved you. Megan, I pass the ball.
I was just going to say that if someone feels safe in your space, even that goes a long way. Like, having tokens for people to use if they want to be touched or they don't want to be touched. I will drive 3.5 hours to a yoga studio because I feel safe. Because it's welcoming. Because it's all the things that we've talked about. But if you can make someone feel safe, like, that goes a really long way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that goes, and I did have on my notes to talk about, like, creating the safe space, being inclusive in our environment, in our space, in our language, in our touch for those that offer touch. Being very intentional about honoring people. We don't know what they're walking in with. We don't know what they're holding or any of that. So I think that's huge. Mm-hmm.
Okay, you just touched on something really important, Jen. You do not bring your personal politics into a yoga class. You do not bring your personal church views, and I say church views, into a yoga class. That place is a place of refuge for all, and really being mindful of that. I don't even post stuff on my socials because I don't want to alienate anyone, from feeling like they're accepted in class. Because my views aren't important. I'm a servant leader, right?
Yeah, I think that is, I love that, Mia. I think that's, if my class isn't about me, and if I'm truly showing up and leading with a heart of, this isn't about me, this is about me serving my students, then I'm going to be mindful of that. I mean, there's nothing worse than enjoying a class, going home, checking them out on their social, and finding out that they have some political agenda that's like vastly different from yours. Like, all of a sudden, what was safe is no longer safe. Even if it's not talked about in class, it's like it's felt now. So really thinking through, like, what am I here? What am I here to do? What kind of culture am I trying to have? What kind of feeling or vibe is my class? What do I want around that? What do I want people to experience when they are in my presence? And then what are the things that I might do that might detract from that? Just because it's probably not intentional. Like, we don't think about it. We don't think about the things that we do naturally, but we can be mindful. We can be introspective enough to say, all right, if this is the type of class, this is the type of space I want to have, this is the type of class I want people to experience, and this is what's happening right now, are they the same? That the same class that I took several years ago that talked about doing for the one what you want to do for the many says you have to ask yourself, any good business owner should ask themselves these two questions. What do I want to be known for? What is it that I want people in my community, in the world, to know me for? What do I want to be known for? And then the second question is, what am I actually known for? So the first is, I get to decide what I want to be known for. The second, I can't control that answer. Like,
Well, you kind of can.
the second is not it's not dependent on I can't answer it. I guess that's what I mean. That requires a survey, that requires asking around, that requires listening. If I say that I want to be known for a welcoming and inviting class, is that what I'm known for or not? Like, and if the answers are different, then it's my work to figure out how to close that gap. We get to, I mean, you get to, as a business owner, you get to decide whether you're going to close it or not. But
Well, you just said something, though, a minute or so ago, where you said it's not what comes naturally. It's not about what comes naturally. It's what comes spiritually in making a safe place for somebody. And that's intentionality. It all goes back to intentionality. What are you trying to cultivate? What is your intention? It's just like why we do yoga. What's the intention behind it? You can say it comes naturally. You can say an offhanded thing that really hurts or alienates somebody. You have to be intentional. It's not hiding or guile. It's being intentional and being intentional about service.
I love that. Well, we've talked about a lot of different things. I think a lot of different ways that community can be cultivated in a class, why it's important. So hopefully that's helpful. We normally wrap up each session talking about a few props that we can take off our mat and apply in our lives this week. So does anybody have a prop that we could take in this thread of community and give us some action items to walk out?
Since Megan can't talk, I'm going to steal hers. Since Megan's over there choking on a fur ball. Learning names. intentionally learning names. Sorry, Megan.
Yeah, that was mine. Thank you.
One
Oh,
thing
this
I
is so
thought
much
of
fun.
that I did not say was it's really easy as instructors, people in general, but as instructors, to play the comparison game and to try to be like other teachers, especially if you're new to teaching. And we've given you a lot of things. There's been a lot of shoulds mentioned in this call, in this podcast. But one of the things that I was thinking about is to, Jen's mentioned it on a podcast before. We will probably mention it 1,000 times because it is a verse that means so much to all of us from Matthew 6:6, where it talks about just be there as simply as honest and honestly as you can manage, to come as you are, to be who you are, to teach in the way that God has ordained you to teach, to have your voice come through. I think that that is a really, you hear different teachers teach and they have like, yoga teacher voice. And there are some people though, when you witness them teaching, it's so powerful because it emulates from the depths of their beings. And I think that when you show up and have Mia, I think, talked about having space, like before and after a class. Maybe it was Jen that brought it up first. I remember you guys tag teaming on that, but just having that, like showing up as you are, who you are, making space, like not overdoing it, overthinking it because you think you ought to be something.
Mhm.
There you go.
That's great.
That was a long-winded prop.
My prop would be to take some time to ask the Lord what type of community he wants you to be cultivating. Like just to ask, like what do I want to do, and then plan a step one. Like not 100 steps, but all right, Lord, what do you want me to do here? And then how can I take one step towards that? So maybe you take one of the things that we've talked about on here, or maybe he gives you something completely different, but what's one step that you can take towards connecting with your students a little more?
My prop is allow room for the linger at the end of your class.
That was worth waiting for, Megan.
All right. As always, we are so grateful for you and honored to have you spend time with us today. We want to hear your thoughts and your questions on community and more. So head over to Instagram and let us know how you use your props this week and what God's teaching you. Follow us as we walk out our purpose and practice together at TUYM Podcast on Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and listen on your favorite podcast provider. Until next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Listen to all of it.